The sun climbed slowly over the Pacific horizon, casting a pale gold across endless blue waves. A lone P-40 Warhawk cut through the morning haze, engine thrumming like a heartbeat in the vast emptiness. The pilot's gloved hands gripped the controls, knuckles white, eyes scanning the sky. Clouds drifted lazily, but in the distance, a dark, disciplined formation appeared, a swarm of 64 Japanese fighters slicing through the air with lethal precision. The sheer number made the heart falter. 64 against 1. Doctrine and experience screamed retreat, yet the pilot held course, instinct sharpening every sense. The wind tore past the cockpit canopy, carrying the scent of fuel, oil, and salt from the ocean below. Shadows of the incoming fighters danced across the sunlit clouds, a predator's choreography rehearsed to perfection. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a crucible of skill, courage, and split-second decisions. Every second counted, and one wrong move could mean instant death. The sky, infinite and unforgiving, would witness a confrontation few could imagine, and fewer would survive. The moment demanded audacity. The impossible was about to be attempted. Early 1942. The Pacific War was in full swing, and the Allies were struggling to respond to a string of Japanese victories across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. Aircraft carriers, naval bases, and airfields were under constant threat, and air superiority was a constant, shifting challenge. For American pilots flying the P-40 Warhawk, every mission carried high stakes, defending supply lines, providing escort, or striking enemy installations, often far beyond support. The P-40, though not the fastest or most maneuverable fighter in the sky, was rugged, reliable, and heavily armed with 6.50 caliber machine guns. It was a workhorse of the skies, built to absorb damage that would down lighter fighters. In the hands of a skilled pilot, the Warhawk could exploit energy tactics, diving attacks, boom and zoom maneuvers, and coordinated teamwork, to offset its limitations. But even with training and experience, facing multiple Japanese aircraft in the open sky was a nightmare scenario. Japanese fighter tactics relied on coordination, aggression, and numerical superiority. The Mitsubishi A6M0, with its lightweight frame and extreme agility, excelled in dogfights, often outturning heavier Allied fighters. Groups of Zeros could overwhelm isolated aircraft, using continuous pressure to exhaust pilots and create openings for lethal attacks. For a lone P-40, a swarm of fighters was not just a threat, it was a calculated death trap. The region in which this encounter took place was heavily contested. Islands and atolls dotted the Pacific like stepping stones, but visibility often gave the defender a fleeting advantage. High clouds, sun glare, and shifting winds added complexity. Pilots learned to read shadows, anticipate enemy vectors, and exploit the tiniest gaps in formation. Still, the odds were daunting. A single miscalculation could result in being outflanked, outgunned, and destroyed before a call for help could reach Allied forces. The pilot involved in this encounter was an experienced aviator, well versed in the limitations and strengths of the P-40. Prior missions had honed instincts for energy fighting, climbing above the enemy, diving to gain speed, and using the aircraft's sturdiness to absorb hits while positioning for counterattacks. But experience alone could not mitigate the psychological weight of facing dozens of adversaries simultaneously. Every moment demanded attention, every maneuver carried risk, and every decision could mean the difference between survival and death. Mission planning reflected these risks. Pilots often flew with limited squadron support due to resource constraints, maintenance issues, or operational necessities. A single P-40 might be dispatched to intercept reconnaissance aircraft, provide cover for bombers, or disrupt enemy patrols. In such cases, isolation was inevitable. Enemy formations, aware of Allied tactics, exploited this vulnerability ruthlessly. Intelligence briefings emphasized caution, yet operational need sometimes overrode prudence, placing pilots directly into scenarios where ingenuity and courage were paramount. The environmental conditions further compounded the challenge. The Pacific skies, brilliant but unforgiving, could deceive and disorient. Sunlight reflecting off clouds and water created glare that masked incoming fighters. Sudden weather shifts, from light rain to low-hanging cloud cover, reduced visibility and complicated maneuvers. Pilots had to rely on instinct, training, and split-second observation to navigate this ever-changing aerial battlefield. This backdrop highlights the improbability of the event to come. One P-40, alone and exposed, would soon confront a formation so large that it challenged every rule of engagement. But the pilot's knowledge of tactics, the P-40's mechanical strengths, and the unforgiving environmental conditions created a crucible in which audacity and skill could redefine what was possible in aerial combat. The stage was now set. The sky, open and vast, would witness a confrontation that would test human ingenuity against overwhelming force. The pilot, aware of the danger yet undeterred, was about to face a scenario few could imagine, and even fewer would survive. The Japanese fighter doctrine in 1942 was built on precision, coordination, and relentless aggression. Pilots of the Mitsubishi A6M0 were trained to exploit their aircraft's exceptional maneuverability, often executing tight turns and vertical loops that Allied planes struggled to match. These tactics were reinforced by group formations designed to maximize overlapping fields of fire, maintain constant pressure, and isolate lone opponents. For a single P-40 entering such a formation, the threat was overwhelming. Training emphasized teamwork and discipline. Japanese pilots drilled continuously on situational awareness, formation integrity, and engagement timing. A squadron could execute coordinated attacks with split-second precision, overwhelming even seasoned Allied aviators. Their confidence was rooted not only in superior maneuverability but in extensive experience gained from repeated victories in the early months of the Pacific War. Yet this very discipline, when confronted with an unpredictable and audacious adversary, could become a vulnerability. Allied pilots, in contrast, were taught to compensate for the P-40's relative limitations. Energy fighting became the central doctrine, using altitude and speed to dictate engagements, striking with diving attacks, then climbing away before the enemy could respond. Solo pilots were trained to use ingenuity, sun positioning, cloud cover, and tactical deception to offset numerical inferiority. Even in isolation, a skilled aviator could manipulate the environment and the enemy's assumptions to create opportunities. The psychological dimension of air combat was immense. Facing overwhelming odds, one aircraft against dozens, required not just technical skill but mental fortitude. The mind of a pilot oscillated between heightened focus and instinctual reaction, parsing dozens of threats simultaneously. Decision-making occurred in fractions of a second, and mistakes could not be corrected. Fear, adrenaline, and anticipation coexisted, each influencing the body's responses, hands tightening on the controls, eyes darting across the sky, heartbeat sinking to the rhythm of survival. Environmental conditions played a crucial role. Pacific skies were deceptive, the interplay of sun, clouds, and haze could conceal approaching aircraft or mask tactical maneuvers. Pilots learned to read subtle cues, contrails, shadow shifts, or sudden changes in formation behavior, to anticipate threats. Wind patterns, thermals, and turbulence added further complexity, demanding adaptability and constant recalibration. The lone P-40 pilot would rely on these natural factors to create fleeting advantages against the overwhelming Japanese formation. Historical accounts from similar engagements emphasize that no amount of training could fully prepare a pilot for such overwhelming odds. Isolation, limited ammunition, and mechanical limitations compounded the stress. Every decision, whether to climb, dive, turn, or engage, carried life-or-death consequences. Yet these scenarios also revealed the potential for extraordinary heroism. A combination of experience, skill, audacity, and environmental awareness could allow a single pilot to survive, and even triumph, against the most intimidating odds. In this context, the P-40 Warhawk, often underestimated compared to the nimble Zeros, demonstrated its strengths. Its sturdy construction allowed it to absorb damage that might cripple lighter fighters. Its armament, while not as powerful as larger caliber guns, could be devastating if aimed precisely. Speed in dives and climbs enabled pilots to execute energy tactics effectively, exploiting the enemy's overconfidence or miscalculations. Combined with the pilot's ingenuity, these capabilities created the conditions for an extraordinary aerial encounter. The convergence of these factors, enemy tactics, pilot skill, aircraft capabilities, environmental conditions, and psychological pressure, set the stage for a confrontation that would test the limits of human and machine alike. One P-40, facing a swarm of 64 Japanese fighters, would soon engage in a battle that defied probability, where split-second decisions and audacity would determine survival. The conditions were now primed. The pilot's training, the P-40's strengths, and the unpredictable sky were about to collide with overwhelming numerical force, leading to a confrontation that would shock everyone and demonstrate the extraordinary potential of skill, courage, and ingenuity in aerial warfare. In the cockpit of the P-40, the pilot's world contracted to the canopy, the controls, and the sky above. The enormity of facing 64 enemy fighters was undeniable, yet fear was measured and controlled. Each heartbeat resonated with a rhythm of urgency, a mental metronome guiding split-second decisions. Training dictated actions, but instinct filled the gaps. The pilot had to anticipate not just the movement of individual zeros, but the collective patterns of the formation, a swarm moving as one, yet vulnerable to missteps. Physical endurance became as critical as mental acuity. Fingers tightened on the control stick, eyes constantly scanned for altitude, distance, and enemy positioning. The P-40 jolted with every adjustment, every maneuver demanding precise coordination between mind and machine. The pilot's resolve balanced between courage and calculated risk, aware that hesitation could mean instant destruction, yet overaggression could equally prove fatal. Survival depended on a harmonious blend of reflex, experience, and nerve. Amid this pressure, awareness of the broader mission never left the pilot. Escorting bombers, defending strategic positions, or disrupting reconnaissance runs, the purpose of each sortie added weight to every decision. Courage was not reckless, it was deliberate, calibrated, and informed by the stakes at hand. The human element, the pilot's nerve, focus, and intuition, was the linchpin that could transform overwhelming odds into opportunity. Air combat is a chess match executed at hundreds of miles per hour. For a lone P-40, tactical thinking had to extend beyond immediate survival to encompass prediction, deception, and exploitation of enemy behavior. The pilot could not confront the swarm head-on, conventional dogfight tactics would be suicidal. Instead, positioning, altitude, and speed became weapons. Diving attacks, rapid climbs, and tight turns allowed the P-40 to strike fleetingly and vanish, forcing the Japanese formation to overextend or misalign. The pilot leveraged environmental features, cloud cover, sun glare, and horizon lines, to mask movements. The Japanese relied on visual contact, any disruption to their perception was a tactical advantage. Each maneuver created openings, a slight roll to reveal a flank, a sudden dive to exploit energy potential, or a climb to lure enemies into misjudging distance. The orchestration of these tactics demanded foresight and precision, compressing complex decisions into split-second reactions. Coordination with distant squadron elements, even if not physically present, influenced maneuvering. Anticipation of support, radio calls, and potential reinforcements informed each action. The tactical perspective reveals that aerial warfare is not merely about firepower, it is a continuous negotiation of space, time, and psychological pressure, with victory determined as much by intellect as by skill. The P-40 Warhawk, often underestimated compared to the nimble Zeros, possessed characteristics that could be decisive in capable hands. Its durable airframe allowed it to absorb hits that would cripple lighter fighters. The 6.50 caliber machine guns, while less powerful than some larger caliber armaments, could deliver concentrated fire capable of disabling enemy aircraft when aimed precisely. Energy management was central to the P-40's technological advantage. Unlike the more fragile Zero, the Warhawk could dive at high speed without structural failure, convert altitude into velocity, and regain maneuverability quickly. This allowed the pilot to employ boom and zoom tactics, diving to attack, then climbing to regain height advantage, turning the aircraft's limitations into tactical assets. Engine reliability and fuel capacity also played a critical role. Long-range missions in the Pacific demanded endurance, and the P-40's ability to sustain performance over extended periods was crucial. Technology alone could not overcome overwhelming numbers, but when paired with pilot skill and situational awareness, the Warhawk's mechanical attributes provided avenues for survival and offensive action against an otherwise superior force. Leadership in aerial combat extends beyond issuing orders, it is the capacity to make decisive choices under extreme pressure. In this encounter, the pilot effectively assumed command of the battlefield, orchestrating maneuvers with precision and foresight. Solo, isolated, and outnumbered, the Warhawk pilot became both decision-maker and executor, demonstrating situational leadership where instinct, experience, and authority converge. Every action reflected leadership in miniature, anticipating enemy behavior, exploiting formation weaknesses, and managing aircraft energy to create openings. There was no room for hesitation, no opportunity to consult. The ability to assess threats, prioritize targets, and synchronize maneuvers under fire defined the encounter. Leadership here was personal, internalized, and immediate, an exercise in responsibility and courage compressed into seconds. The effect extended beyond the pilot. By disrupting the enemy formation, even temporarily, the Warhawk influenced the operational environment for Allied forces nearby. The pilot's decisiveness, judgment, and audacity shaped the encounter's trajectory, illustrating that leadership in combat is not solely hierarchical but also situational, emerging organically when circumstance demands. From the Japanese pilot's viewpoint, the encounter began as a routine sweep of the skies. 64 Zeros, trained for coordinated aggression, expected dominance over any single opponent. Their numerical advantage, maneuverability, and training suggested a swift, decisive victory. Yet as the lone P-40 executed unpredictable maneuvers, confusion began to ripple through the formation. The swarm, initially cohesive, faced challenges it had not encountered in simulation or prior engagements. Overextension, momentary gaps in coverage, and misjudged attack angles created vulnerabilities. Enemy pilots, accustomed to overwhelming weaker forces, confronted the psychological shock of an opponent capable of exploiting terrain, sun, and tactical knowledge. Their discipline, while formidable, could not fully compensate for the surprise and ingenuity of a skilled adversary. Historical accounts emphasize that encounters with lone, agile pilots could fracture even well-drilled formations. The psychological toll of facing unexpected tactics, fear of collision, uncertainty of positioning, and split-second defensive reactions, shifted the balance. The enemy, confident in their superiority, suddenly confronted the reality that technology and numbers alone were insufficient to guarantee success. Amid the technical and tactical dimensions, the encounter raises questions of moral courage and ethical responsibility. The pilot faced overwhelming odds not out of recklessness, but to fulfill a mission, protect comrades, and survive. Each maneuver carried ethical weight, choices that could risk lives, both enemy and allied, were executed with deliberate calculation. Combat is inherently destructive, yet heroism emerges in the restraint, judgment, and skill applied under lethal conditions. The decision to engage a vastly superior force highlights a tension between duty and self-preservation. Ethical considerations are embedded in the split-second choices, which target to prioritize, when to attack, when to evade. Survival depended on mastering these choices, while adhering to the mission's overarching purpose. The pilot's actions exemplify a moral courage distinct from recklessness, a deliberate confrontation with danger informed by skill, responsibility, and the understanding of consequences. The sky trembled with motion. The lone P-40 Warhawk sliced through the thin morning clouds, its engine a steady roar against the chaos gathering above. 64 Japanese fighters converged from multiple directions, a disciplined swarm moving as one, their formation precise, their intent unmistakable. Every pilot in the P-40's cockpit knew the odds, 1 against dozens, survival uncertain. The first attack wave struck with lethal intent. Zeros dove in sweeping arcs, testing reactions, probing defenses, and seeking an opening. The P-40 pilot reacted with instinct sharpened by hours of training. A sudden bank to the left, a rapid climb, and the sun's glare blinded pursuers momentarily. Enemy tracers streaked past, missing by mere feet, while the Warhawk regained altitude and speed. Each movement was calculated to exploit weaknesses in the formation, each decision balancing aggression with evasion. Chaos reigned, yet within it, order emerged through the pilot's control. The Warhawk executed tight rolls and climbing turns, using vertical space to dictate engagement. Enemy pilots, expecting a conventional dogfight, struggled to anticipate these maneuvers. Overconfidence in numbers began to falter as individual Zeros misjudged spacing, colliding with the limits of formation discipline. The swarm was powerful, but even the most skilled collective can be disrupted by audacity and precision. The pilot's mind worked at a breakneck pace. Every maneuver was a mental equation: velocity, angle of attack, altitude, and enemy behavior. Split-second calculations determined whether to engage or evade, fire or climb. Tracers cut arcs through the sky, shells struck water and clouds, and engines screamed under the strain. In those moments, the P-40 became an extension of the pilot's body and intellect, each movement synchronized with perception, instinct, and strategy. Environmental elements played a decisive role. Clouds masked the aircraft's position, allowing sudden changes in direction that confused the enemy. The sun, rising behind the P-40, blinded pursuers at critical moments, forcing Zeros to break off or overshoot. Wind gusts and turbulence, normally nuisances, were exploited to add unpredictability to the Warhawk's movements. The pilot transformed every factor into a tactical tool, turning potential obstacles into advantages. Even as the initial wave struck, the P-40 managed to disable 2 enemy fighters. Precise bursts from the 6.50 caliber machine guns tore through engines and wings, creating smoke trails that spiraled into the sky. Enemy pilots, witnessing losses among their formation, began to adjust, tightening their approach, but the pilot anticipated these shifts. Feints, sudden dives, and deceptive turns kept the swarm off balance. What seemed impossible, 1 against 64, was evolving into a contest of skill, nerve, and split-second ingenuity. The psychological intensity reached its peak. Adrenaline surged, yet the pilot remained remarkably composed. Awareness expanded, encompassing all angles of threat simultaneously. Every motion of the Warhawk, every enemy reaction, became data to be processed in real time. The clash of fear and focus created a heightened perception, a clarity that enabled maneuvers beyond ordinary expectation. By the end of the initial engagement, the P-40 had survived multiple coordinated attacks, inflicted damage, and sown confusion among the enemy formation. The swarm, formidable in numbers, now displayed fractures, gaps in coordination, hesitation in attack, and misaligned pursuit vectors. The balance of the encounter was shifting, though danger remained ever present. One miscalculation, one missed cue, and the Warhawk could have been torn from the sky. This opening phase set the stage for the extraordinary maneuver that would define the encounter. The pilot, exploiting every advantage of aircraft, environment, and enemy psychology, prepared for the decisive action, a daring tactic that would astonish friend and foe alike. The P-40 dived sharply, nose cutting through clouds and sunlight, drawing the swarm into a deadly trap of momentum and misdirection. Enemy Zeros, anticipating a conventional retreat or evasive turn, followed aggressively, each pilot convinced the lone Warhawk would falter. Instead, the P-40 exploited the sheer energy of its dive, accelerating beyond what the Zeros expected. Its sturdy frame absorbed the strain, while the pilot's hands guided it with a precision born of instinct and experience. At the critical moment, the Warhawk executed a near-vertical climb, pulling up directly into the sun. Japanese pilots approaching from below were blinded, their formation disrupted by glare and sudden shifts in altitude. One by one, attackers overshot, engines screaming and wings straining, exposing their vulnerable undersides. The pilot unleashed short, controlled bursts, targeting engines and fuel tanks with lethal accuracy. Smoke plumes rose from the first two destroyed Zeros, spiraling against the pale sky, evidence of precision striking under extreme pressure. Confusion rippled through the remaining formation. Tight coordination, the very backbone of Japanese fighter tactics, faltered. Pilots collided with invisible limits, misjudged distances, and broke ranks in attempts to evade fire. In the cockpit, the P-40 became both predator and observer, guiding enemy behavior with calculated feints and sudden directional shifts. Every maneuver was a gamble, one miscalculation could result in fatal collision or concentrated fire, but each was executed with unmatched skill and clarity. As the engagement progressed, the Warhawk's audacity forced further mistakes. Some enemy pilots, attempting to rejoin their formation, misread positioning and collided with comrades or overshot pursuit entirely. Others, attempting defensive maneuvers, left blind spots that the P-40 exploited, striking with bursts that disabled engines or shredded wings. The swarm's numerical advantage was nullified by confusion and tactical ingenuity, a testament to the principle that in aerial combat, discipline alone cannot guarantee victory. The psychological strain on both sides was palpable. The P-40 pilot experienced heightened focus, a hyper-awareness of every motion, every shadow, and every potential threat. Enemy pilots, confident moments before, now confronted uncertainty and fear. The swarm's cohesion, once a symbol of lethal dominance, fractured under relentless pressure. The encounter became not just a test of skill, but a battle of nerves and perception, where decisiveness and audacity outweighed sheer numbers. Finally, the maneuver reached its apex. The P-40, now weaving among the fractured enemy, executed a series of rolling dives and climbs, evading counterattacks while systematically reducing opposition. By the end of the confrontation, the Warhawk remained airborne, largely unscathed, while enemy losses were substantial. Several Zeros lay smoking and disabled across the sky, survivors retreating in disarray. The impossible had been achieved, a single P-40 had survived, and dominated, an engagement against 64 enemy fighters through skill, audacity, and tactical brilliance. The aftermath was immediate yet complex. Operational reports would later document enemy losses, pilot actions, and tactical insights. The Warhawk pilot, though physically unharmed, bore the psychological imprint of the encounter, a mixture of adrenaline, relief, and profound awareness of the razor-thin margin between survival and destruction. The encounter became a case study in the effectiveness of improvisation, environmental exploitation, and the decisive impact of human skill in aerial warfare. The extraordinary engagement set the stage for broader consequences. It influenced squadron morale, validated tactics under extreme conditions, and highlighted the limitations of numerical superiority when confronted by ingenuity and audacity. The encounter's effects would ripple through the Pacific theater, inspiring both tactical adjustments and enduring narratives of courage under impossible odds. The sky fell into an uneasy calm. Smoke spiraled from disabled Zeros, twisting against the morning sun as the remnants of the formation dispersed. For the lone P-40, survival was immediate but hard-won, etched into every control movement, every muscle tensed for reflex. The air was heavy with the scent of aviation fuel and the residue of gunfire, a stark reminder of the encounter's ferocity. Operational reports from the squadron later described the engagement as a singular demonstration of skill and audacity. The numerical dominance of the Japanese fighters had been neutralized, not through overwhelming firepower, but through precise tactics, environmental exploitation, and sheer determination. Enemy losses were substantial, multiple aircraft destroyed or critically damaged, with pilots forced into retreat or emergency landings. The psychological impact on nearby Japanese squadrons was evident, as caution replaced confidence, disrupting future patrols and engagements. For the Allied side, the encounter was a beacon of morale. The Warhawk had proven that the P-40, often underestimated in comparison to the nimble Zeros, could survive and even dominate when wielded by a skilled pilot. Commanders cited the engagement in after-action reports, emphasizing lessons in split-second decision-making, tactical ingenuity, and energy management. The incident reinforced doctrine encouraging pilots to exploit terrain, sun, and unexpected maneuvers rather than relying solely on numbers or brute force. The P-40 pilot's actions highlighted the crucial interplay between human skill and mechanical capability. Every roll, dive, and climb had been executed with precision, turning the aircraft into an extension of the pilot's awareness. The immediate tactical advantage lay not only in the destruction of enemy aircraft but in the disruption of formation cohesion. The swarm's carefully drilled coordination was fractured, demonstrating that training and numbers could be overcome by ingenuity and decisive action under pressure. Supply lines and airspace control in the local region were affected as well. With several enemy aircraft neutralized, Allied reconnaissance and bombing missions could proceed with reduced risk. The encounter allowed nearby air units to operate with a degree of freedom previously denied, creating operational momentum. Commanders recognized that tactical victories, even by a single pilot, could influence broader campaigns by shifting local balance and morale. Psychologically, the encounter left an indelible mark on both sides. The pilot, though uninjured, carried the intense memory of life-or-death decision-making, an acute awareness of fragility in the sky. For the Japanese pilots, the loss of aircraft and the shock of an unexpected countermaneuver forced re-evaluation of assumptions regarding the capabilities of individual opponents. Fear and caution replaced overconfidence, demonstrating the ripple effect of one extraordinary action on the enemy's mindset. The meticulous recording of the encounter in logs, maps, and personal accounts ensured that it would inform future engagements. Pilots studying these reports could learn the value of combining aircraft capability, tactical foresight, and environmental manipulation. The engagement became a template, a benchmark for solo operations, demonstrating that exceptional skill could defy overwhelming odds and redefine expectations for aerial combat in the Pacific theater. Amid the chaos and destruction, a quiet triumph emerged. The P-40 remained intact, the pilot alive, and enemy forces diminished. The encounter reinforced the timeless principle of warfare: ingenuity, courage, and skill can overturn even the most formidable numerical disadvantage. The immediate aftermath, tangible and psychological, set the stage for the broader strategic consequences that would unfold in the days and weeks following the engagement. In the days following the encounter, the effects of the lone P-40's audacity extended far beyond the immediate engagement. Allied air units gained increased freedom in contested sectors, as Japanese forces adjusted patrol patterns and exercised greater caution. Intelligence reports noted gaps in enemy coverage, a direct consequence of the disruption caused by the Warhawk. Commanders used the engagement as a case study, demonstrating that a single pilot, applying skill and initiative, could influence operational momentum. Strategically, the event challenged assumptions about numerical superiority. 64 fighters, coordinated and disciplined, were expected to annihilate an isolated opponent. Yet, the engagement illustrated that training and firepower alone could be offset by environmental awareness, tactical ingenuity, and rapid decision-making. Military analysts cited the encounter in discussions of air doctrine, emphasizing the importance of flexibility, situational exploitation, and the human element in high-stakes combat. The psychological impact on Japanese pilots was equally significant. Reports from subsequent missions described increased caution, hesitation in attack runs, and an awareness that overconfidence could be fatal. The aura of invincibility surrounding large formations was shaken, providing a subtle but meaningful advantage to Allied aviators in future engagements. Meanwhile, Allied morale surged. The story of one pilot confronting overwhelming odds and emerging victorious became a symbol of courage, skill, and determination. It inspired training programs, emphasizing improvisation and calculated risk in addition to standard combat techniques. The P-40 pilot's actions were recorded meticulously in after-action reports. Tactical lessons emphasized the importance of energy management, precision shooting, and exploiting environmental factors such as sun, clouds, and wind. Pilots across squadrons studied the engagement, noting how audacious maneuvers could fracture even the most disciplined enemy formations. These insights informed both immediate operational planning and longer-term doctrinal development for the Pacific theater. Beyond immediate operational effects, the encounter entered the historical record as a testament to human ingenuity under extreme pressure. The pilot's combination of skill, courage, and decisive action demonstrated the enduring principle that warfare is shaped not only by technology and numbers but by creativity and resolve. Historians highlight the engagement as an exemplary case of how individual initiative can produce outcomes that exceed expectations, shaping both tactical understanding and strategic thinking. Casualty and aircraft loss reports confirmed the engagement's tangible impact. Multiple Japanese fighters were destroyed or disabled, and surviving pilots were forced to retreat or rejoin formations under constrained conditions. The disruption of the swarm's cohesion created opportunities for subsequent Allied operations, improving airspace control and mission success rates. The encounter thus had both immediate tactical significance and broader operational consequences, reinforcing lessons about risk-taking, adaptability, and initiative. Ultimately, the legacy of the lone P-40 facing 64 fighters extends beyond its immediate tactical or operational effects. It exemplifies the enduring interplay of human skill, technology, and circumstance in warfare. The pilot's actions demonstrated that audacity, ingenuity, and precise execution could defy overwhelming odds, leaving a lasting imprint on military thinking, morale, and historical narrative. In the vast expanse of the Pacific sky, a single P-40 Warhawk against 64 Japanese fighters seems almost inconceivable. Yet in this extraordinary encounter, the impossible became reality through skill, ingenuity, and courage. The pilot's actions transformed the aircraft from a machine into an extension of human will, demonstrating that determination and expertise can transcend sheer numbers. Technology, while decisive, is never absolute. The P-40 was not the fastest or most agile fighter in the Pacific, yet its durability, firepower, and energy potential became instruments of survival in capable hands. It was the human element, the pilot's focus, experience, and split-second judgment, that tipped the balance, proving that innovation and audacity often outweigh brute force. The psychological dimension of warfare is equally profound. Facing overwhelming odds, the pilot remained calm under pressure, making rapid decisions that saved both life and mission. The enemy, confident in their superiority, was forced to confront uncertainty, hesitation, and vulnerability. Courage, in this context, is measured not by bravado but by disciplined action, informed risk, and the capacity to act decisively when the stakes are absolute. This encounter exemplifies the interplay of environment, technology, and human agency. Clouds, sunlight, wind, and mechanical limitations were all exploited to achieve success, revealing the depth of tactical awareness required in aerial combat. Beyond the immediate victory, the engagement inspired morale, influenced tactical doctrine, and left a lasting impression on military thinking in the Pacific theater. In the end, the story of the P-40 against 64 fighters is a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. It reminds us that even in moments of overwhelming adversity, skill, creativity, and resolve can redefine what is possible. The sky, once a theater of near-certain destruction, became a canvas for extraordinary heroism, a singular moment in history where intellect and audacity prevailed against staggering odds.